237 to 240. So, I'm gonna come over here so you can see me. So I would highly recommend you do that as well. So 237.
Oh, we have a quiz.
Dude,
You didn't put a check on Miss
Write your name and
Morse.
date at the
I'm
top.
triggered.
That's not a good heading. Write your name and date at
I'm
the top.
sorry.
Miss Morse, I'm triggered. We have a quiz.
Study. You do time properly.
It's a pop quiz.
It's a reading quiz.
Yeah, I know.
She didn't put the check mark.
Oh,
Can you
check
please
mark.
put check
Check
mark,
mark.
please?
Yo, I wrote my name. I should get a check mark now.
So just 237.
Yeah.
Is that almost better?
237 to 240.
This is a minute.
Alright, go ahead and tear out your homework and pass it forward.
Yes, I'm getting 100!
Alright. So go ahead, hopefully you get it probably. Try to tear it as neat as you can. I know some of your papers are a little tear it out as neat as
Can you
can.
put a check mark on it, please?
I think I got 100. I got 100.
All
I
of
got
my
100.
papers have a check
I
mark
got
on it. I'm triggered.
I'll check mark it later after I grade it. Thank you.
What'd you say? That she was.
I got 100.
What the world? Your eyebrows like.
Alright, so let's go over it. I know that, okay, Jamie, do not watch the next part and change your answer. So email me
Change
the
them.
picture on it,
Change
so we do have to
Change
change
them.
them.
Do it while you still can.
Alright, number 4, anyone remember, what were the taxes called which ended up paying for the good vote? So raise your hand if you just remember. I know you all people don't have it. I'm not calling them that. Alright, Quentin.
Poll Texas.
Poll
It
taxes.
was a lot.
Make sure you're not too distracting because Jamie, remember, is going to be watching this probably with your voice, so not too loud for her so that way she doesn't blow it.
I never watched it.
I didn't either.
Okay, we're not.
I
Alright,
just
what term?
I had the volume all the way down.
Alright. One term indicated that for many years the South voted steadily Democratic. Alright, anyone remember that one?
Solid.
Are you looking at your book?
Cheer.
Of course.
Yeah, it is.
It was, but I didn't see it.
Uh-huh.
I promise I didn't
Get out,
see it.
sinner.
That's the one I remember from the
Repent.
word.
I'm happy for you.
You're a carpetbagger.
Alright, number 5. What term? No, this is our, who was the founder of the Tuskegee Institute? Remember? Alright, Chris?
Booker T.
What's his
Booger.
last name?
Washington.
Alright, say it one more time so that way
Booker
Jamie
T.
can hear it.
Washington.
Good
What's so
job.
funny about Booker T. Washington?
Booger T. Washington.
Ethan and Brecken, don't slow down my class with stuff like that. Y'all are juniors in high school. Number 7. Well, through which organization did the Methodist Episcopal Church set up a number of churches in southern states to educate the former slaves? Anyone remember this one? Alright, Chris.
Freedman's Aid Society.
Good job. Number 8. Who was the best known teacher at Tuskegee Institute? Alright, well, Quentin, you've already answered one. Let's give Ethan a chance.
George Washington Carver.
Good job, George Washington Carver. Number 9. How were Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver good examples to look up to? Alright, Genesis, raise your hand.
Yes.
Genesis, go.
Because they were educated and putting their mind to things they knew they could do as black men.
And then also, they were also very particular for George Washington Carver. He was also forgiving of people. Because you remember what George Washington Carver did?
Peanuts!
Yes, in particular to help out the South. And so because he understood of, okay, I could be angry at these people, but no, I'm going to try to figure out what can I do to help them so they're not stuck for a long time. So in particular, he was helpful for them. Alright, you're not making too many noises with that. So if you need to drink water, make sure it's not too much. Number 10.
The hamster pellets too.
Chris, don't distract my class. Number 10. What was the system of farming used by many Southerners followed during the Civil War? This is more of an emergency situation. Alright, I think you've already answered 2, Chris, so let's get Quentin.
Sharecropping.
Do you have it open in your
Yes, he
textbook?
does.
Sinner,
Well, I already knew it.
repent, you and Brecken.
I was.
Alright, let's go ahead and let's review super quickly. If we have time at the end, we'll review some more because I want to hurry up and finish the material because the quiz over the material will be Monday.
The
So
quiz?
that's the reason. Over the material
The
will be
quiz?
Monday.
Quiz.
Will
So
be
she's
Monday.
telling us we have a
I'm telling you
quiz.
right now
No quiz
because
Monday.
I don't like quizzes on Monday, but I'm running out of time.
I really don't care.
Why can't we do it on Saturday?
I don't like school on Mondays.
We'll come to your
Yeah.
house.
Alright, so super quick, we're gonna do just the palm version so I can move this really quickly and then we can finish it up and then we'll review for real at the end. So whoever gets their hand up, my
Score.
eyes, Yeah, you can keep track of your points, but it's my eyes, so I'm sorry.
What type of quiz is this?
It'll be a review quiz.
Review.
So study basically anything we haven't had a quiz over yet.
Because you
Oh.
said on.
We then.
Alright, so thinking back over it, okay, we talked about finishing up the previous chapter, page 128. Who is the best known as the person in your book gives an example for a chaplain, could not think for a second what that was called. Go, Chris.
What's her?
His last name begins with a J, and his first name begins with a J.
A J?
J.
Oh, I remember this one.
It's very similar to another name, but it's not exactly.
Was the last name weird?
No.
No, it's not weird at all. It's one of the most average JJ names.
Is
you
the first
know.
name weird?
No.
Brecken literally said it yesterday. The
It's
JJ
the most
name?
average JJ name you will ever
Justin
meet.
Jefferson.
Oh my god.
Oh my
Alright, I think
god.
what was next?
John Jones.
John Jones. So it's
Most
John
average.
William Jones.
I
not
knew that
John
too.
John Paul Jones.
No, but somebody else. Remember who that person is?
He was on a ship.
He was. He said, I
You're
have not yet
rapist,
begun to
or-
fight.
I'm
You're
on a
Robert?
boat.
What?
You're rapist or something like that?
No, he defeated that ship. So he defeated.
What?
Okay. Serapes, I believe is how some people say it, but
Oh.
it looks like Serapis, but that's the ship that he defeated. So his ship was the.
Is that for me?
I'm so confused.
Alright, so
Like,
what? That's probably
Y'all remember that?
Moving on. Alright, keep in mind though that your exam does cover everything from the beginning till now. So the reason why we gotta make sure
Why?
to cover everything.
Balboa.
That's the exam. Alright, so who was the slogan "In God We Trust"? So who came up for that for our motto? Turn on to everybody at once. Wait, sure up here. Go. That was Chris.
Sam.
What's his last name? That's not his last name. What?
Chase.
Salmon Chase. Good job. Alright, there are 3 generals your book talks about. Basically saying these generals went back to helping people after the war. Who was the general that founded Hampton University? His last name is not Hampton. Go.
I was
Okay.
gonna say that.
And his last name begins with an A.
An A?
A.
Is it a weird name?
No, you see this name later on.
Just go for the A name that I know you think it was right now. Just say
What name is that, Brecken? Anthony?
Nope. Ethan was next to this one.
You failed.
Angelican or something like that.
Andalinton?
Angelican.
Angelican.
No. Okay. Quentin, you're
That's
next.
I'm close.
I know what it is.
I'm close.
Is Ethan close?
It starts with an A?
Sort of. It starts with an A.
I just wanna say something.
Anderson.
What?
Anderson.
No.
That's the one.
Alright.
You said the same
No.
thing yesterday.
Samuel Armstrong. So
Oh,
Armstrong.
stretch. My boy stretch.
Y'all remembered it for like
My boy
what
Stretch.
yesterday.
My boy Stretch.
Armstrong. Write it down.
Give me a piece of paper, I'll write it down.
Quentin, get out a piece of paper.
Write down that thing.
I'm writing it within my brain.
Alright, let's see.
Write it on
What
my jacket.
is the Southern general? He went back to serve in his church once the war was over. Go. Chris and then Ethan.
That's 4 times in a row. What does it start with?
His last name begins with a P. I
Yeah,
think
that's
this
funny.
is
One
maybe
session
what you were
right now.
thinking of. Starts with P.
Last name starts with P.
Yeah.
Weird name.
Yes.
Future president.
It's close. This act was passed underneath a president, so that's why the president is known for this act. There's not a president's last name.
Parientes.
Pendleton. So William Nelson Pendleton. Alright,
That's how I remembered it from yesterday.
alright, what do we call the freed slaves? What's just the term for them? Go. It was Chris and then Quentin.
Freeman.
What's it D?
Yes, with P.
Good. Freedmen. Alright, what is the name for Lincoln's plan saying which 10% of the voter population takes another oath of loyalty, they can come back in and reform their state government?
9%.
Go. That was better.
10%.
I was like, are you serious?
I thought he said 2.
Oh no.
Two-fifths compromise.
Alright,
What was that?
Did I enter one
The
already?
two-fifths compromise, 2/5 of the slaves can vote.
Huh?
3/5. No, that's the 3/5 compromise.
What you?
There was no 3/5 compromise. Wait a minute. Not 2/5?
Mm-mm.
What is it?
Alright, so like, you're thinking back with the idea of the South was trying to claim the slave population for representation, not for voting. The slaves are not allowed to vote at all up to this point, but claiming it representation, and then the
Which
North was
compromise
claiming
was
it, what?
Which? Oh, counted as people. They
Yeah,
counted
counting as people, but they're also counting for taxation as purposes. I believe that's the 3/5 compromise, I think is what you're thinking of. Alright, so, what is the bill that says that, about the president, what is the bill that says that Congress control Reconstruction? What is that bill? It starts with people's last names, so W, but that's not helpful.
Whitaker,
You
or
already know it.
it's something like that.
It's Wendleton.
Alright,
Yeah.
Wade Davis Bill. Wade Davis Bill.
Wade.
Wade Davis Bill.
I've never heard that term.
Me.
Alright, big it up for him. Alright, what is the name, what type of veto is it? Whenever a president doesn't directly veto, he just basically puts it away and then forgets about it. Not really, because he's not doing anything with it. Go. It was Chris
me.
Becker just
What
back.
are the first first words?
Pete.
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 No, PV.
Okay. It's something veto.
Oh,
You're
it
in
rhymes.
11th grade.
Oh,
It
man.
rhymes.
Great.
It rhymes with
No. No.
Frickin' stop.
socket.
Starts with rhymes with what?
Socket.
Please don't.
Why?
There's a locket in my
Why?
pocket.
Alright,
Why?
now
It's element.
Why?
Alright, what were the names for one of the two people that were the leaders of the radicals that they said, oh no, we're not gonna work with Andrew Johnson. They might have worked with
What's it
Abraham
called?
Lincoln, but they chose not
Oh
to.
no.
There are two people.
Wait, sorry, wait.
The last names begin with S and S, so that's nice.
No, God. You're not learning anything.
Go.
Solomon.
Nope, good guess though.
Stephen Smith. Samuel.
Stephen.
Nope, is that a good guess?
Sherman.
Nope, that's a good guess though. Alright, right on.
Stephen Hawking.
No. Charles Sumner, Thaddeus Stevens. Thaddeus Stevens. Make a note for those two people. Alright, who became?
Stephen Hawking?
Why are you?
I'm gonna remember that now.
Don't remember.
Stephen
Alright,
Hawkins.
don't get too distracted. Who became president whenever Abraham Lincoln died? You do know this. I'm trying to watch everybody wants. Sorry, but I'm
I've
trying.
got words in my head.
You should write down.
I'm ready.
Go. I think you did good.
Right behind you.
I did.
I haven't got it at all.
Who became president when Abraham Lincoln died?
He's up there.
Wait, sorry.
It's
Eon.
Wait,
that
sorry.
one.
Starts with a J.
He's not okay.
That one.
Johnson.
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 No.
This one.
Andrew Johnson. Yeah, I didn't put him up yet. Alright, what is the name for the bureau that Congress created to provide food and clothing for the freed slaves?
Food stamps.
Sorry, it's flickered. Doesn't want to Go. Okay, that's correct.
Bureau of what's the thing service?
It's something bureau.
What is the first word service?
F.
F?
Yeah. What?
Freedman Bureau.
Say it one more time.
Freedman Bureau.
Good job. Freedmen Bureau.
I was going to say
I
that.
was going to say
Alright,
that.
what is the bill that guaranteed citizenship to the freedmen born in the United States? We later on make an amendment for this, but what is the bill that says citizenship is given to the freedmen? Go. That was your.
14.
Okay, so that is the amendment, but what's the bill that was passed first?
Civil rights bill.
Good job. Civil rights bill. Alright, so let's get 14th then. Number 15. What is the 15th?
I just forgot words.
What is the 15th amendment guarantee?
No.
Civil rights bill.
I just guessed. I just threw some words out. I didn't.
Oh my god, you're so smart! Alright, so what does the 15th amendment do? Go. That was Chris. I'm sorry. I pointed the wrong, I said the wrong name.
Sorry, Chris.
Free men have the right to vote.
Yep, right, go.
15.
Alright,
Hand
what?
sanitizer.
Quickly, don't walk in front of my camera, that was so awkward. Alright,
All the
what
way
is
in
the
front.
act that divided the former Confederacy, except for Tennessee, into 5 military districts? Go. That was Chris.
Starts with an A.
It's something act, so.
Starts with an
No, there's an R.
A. An R.
R.
Right. It's like I thought it was Amnesty Act, but that's not right. Is it a weird thing?
Not really.
Is it a name?
Ethan, don't say such a thing.
What do you say? Is it a
I'm
name?
with you.
No.
Let me just say something. Is it the
Hurry.
what you done? An act and it starts with an R.
Just an R. Dividing the South into 5 military districts.
R.
I don't know it.
If she says me, I'm just gonna
Alright.
say Reagan.
Nope. Quitting Detroit had to go. I don't remember. Okay.
Restrain Act.
Nope. Reconstruction Act
We
is
could-
correct. Reconstruction Act.
Whoa.
Alright.
Frickin', when'd you start knowing stuff?
Alright.
I'm kidding.
You need a
I'm
hug.
Who was the Secretary of War that President Johnson basically fired because he was cooperating with the radicals, and so Johnson said, "You're supposed to be working for me. I'm firing you." Go. All right, that was you then, Ethan.
What's her?
His last name begins with an S.
An S?
S.
Have you heard his name before?
I talked about it yesterday.
Is it a weird last name?
Okay.
Samuel
Nope. Alright, Ian.
Simpsons.
Nope.
Simpsons.
Oh, alright, Reckon.
Some
Nope. Anybody else wanna guess?
No.
Alright, so Edwin Stanton. Edwin Stanton.
Stanton.
Alright, who is the first president to ever be impeached?
Why?
Donald Trump.
No.
I'm good.
Okay.
Don't kill yourself.
I want everyone at once. It's really hard to watch,
Don't
like,
pull up a knife.
flappy hoodie on the end, so I'm trying. It's hard though. Go. Chris is just asking. Okay.
Oh.
It's not.
I'm so fat.
Okay.
Andrew Johnson.
Andrew Johnson.
Johnson.
Alright, who won the election of 1868?
I don't know. What did it start with?
No.
I
Go.
really won, so I'm
That was
Grant.
Grant, so make it over that.
Oh.
So, you
I remember
said
now.
Grant.
I
Alright.
grant you.
Okay, that's as far as we got yesterday. Does anyone, alright, who has 5 points or more? Anyone have close? Alright, Chris won. Alright, so don't forget your candy, Chris. Identify. Alright, go ahead, take your textbook.
What'd
Turn
you
over to
have?
page 237. 237. Oh, I forgot this is. Alright, we left off talking about the next election, because your book's going through it, you're kind of quickly through this section, just talking about how a lot of the cases, the North and the South are being petty to each other, and a lot of cases, the poor freedmen are just caught in the crosshairs, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So, page 237, I gotta finish teaching this, and then we're done. Alright, I'll have to sign up before I forget. What is due Tuesday?
Depression.
No, what's due Tuesday for real?
Anxiety.
Kill
What's due
depression.
Tuesday for real?
Paper.
The right
The
about
paper I'm not
that
buying.
causes me anxiety.
Yeah, so the right about it, so don't
And
forget.
reports.
Keep in mind what also happens on
Whoa.
Tuesday.
Quiz.
More depression.
No, but keep in mind, the right about it, you're getting graded for writing ability, but remember, you also present it. So it's like an editor. I told this the
Since
other day.
when?
I don't
Alright,
know
alright.
Tuesday. I think
When you're actually really good at
for
presenting
my
stuff, so
brain.
you're fine with that. Alright.
I have a doctor's appointment that day at
So, like how I told y'all previously, so written opinion, so this is the first time we went over it, so the reason why I showed you this and we went over it was a rough draft work. Presentation, 2 to 3 minutes. Some of you forgot that, so keep in mind, you do have to present 2 to 3 minutes. We'll talk about what happens if you go first, because there's only 2 basically topics, so we'll talk about it to make it a little bit more fair for people that want to go first and hurry to get it over with, so people can't just cheat off them and just use them as an example. Okay. Yes,
We
you
didn't
can.
have any more write ballots
For like in the next week before
the
Christmas?
rest of the year.
Yes.
Wait, what did he ask?
Are we gonna have any more write about it?
What about editorials?
Oh yeah, we're gonna have more editorials.
Before
Okay.
break?
No, the
Bleh.
rest of the year.
Yeah, tomorrow.
But what?
Alright, so. 2 things.
Fast, hurry,
Yeah,
waste my time.
The right, or how long are our current events? How long do we have to present them for?
How long do you have to present a current event?
I just do it until it says okay.
3 to 5 minutes.
Okay,
True.
and,
A little bit
alright, I'm not being racist. What race is he?
Okay. Because this is George Washington
He's
Carver.
black and white, don't you
It's
see?
George Washington
Yeah,
Carver.
oh, I thought that was
Yeah.
Booker T.
I'll have to look up over how they did stuff with it, but they're not paintings anymore. I don't remember how they took these, but it's like early versions of like
He looks like
photographs.
a student.
Okay. So to
It's
answer
a
your
shadow
question, Quentin, we have current events. You remember why?
Because you want us
Because
to
I heard
cry.
that. So are you current events?
So we know stuff.
So it's important to be aware of what's happening on the right, and it's helpful for you to have practice debating other people if you have different contrary views. So do you understand that's why it's important?
Yeah, I knew.
Alright, do you understand why it's important, Genesis?
Yes.
Okay. Even if you don't like it, it's okay. The reason why we practice so much is so that way, if you ever have to do it later on, it'll help you to do well for it. Bracken, do you have a question?
I only do one sentence.
You go for question.
But I just say it over and over.
No, you're very reflexive.
Don't tell her.
Oh! Right about
Alright,
it?
we're gonna go.
Fire.
Know that? Everybody
Alright,
knows
237. We're gonna go for it. So keep in mind though, the write about is due Tuesday. You're going to present it as well as turn it in for a written grade.
No.
So it's kind of how like an editorial is, where you're gonna hand me your write about it, and then you're allowed to bring 3x5 cards. You can bring as many 3x5 cards as you want. It's a little bit shorter, so it's 2 to 3 minutes. So if you want to make as many of them as you want for it, but hopefully once you've written about it, you have a good idea. Plus we've been talking about some of this, so it's kind of like a review basically, where you're just talking about the events leading up to it, and then your opinion on it, or you're saying, okay, this is the reason why I think this. So it should be a little bit more straightforward than normal. Alright, anyone have any questions though about the write about it, what to write, or what's about it with presentation? Most of you do pretty good on presentation already though. Alright. Alright, Alright, so page 237. So in a presidential reconstruction, your book points out that with the election of 1876, this is whenever it was really, really close race for it. You had the two candidates, Samuel J. Tilden, and you also had Rutherford B. Hayes. Samuel J. Tilden, he was known for basically getting rid of, or as your book puts it, smashing the bribery scheme in New York. Basically, it was kind of like a mob idea, and he basically caught them and like busted up the ring was the idea. So again, it's not quite the whole mobster era. Does anyone know when does the mobster era really happen in the United States?
The what?
The 50s.
What?
50s.
Not really.
The
The
what?
20s.
Like the gangster mobster area.
The 20s.
20s. So it's more of the mobster, like guys going out with like the Tommy guns and shooting up places. Yeah.
The top
So
hat,
that's
like,
in
more
like the
top
19.
one.
Okay, you don't have permission to talk.
Sorry.
So it's in like the 1920s, 1930s. So again, we're not quite to that era, but it was the idea. It was kind of like that they had managed to steal 15 million from New York City, and he was instrumental in catching them. So that's what he was known for, and that's what he was like running on. This is what I'm known for. Okay.
Wasn't Al Capone in the 20s?
Who's that?
We'll talk about it. Don't worry about it. He's in your book. Alright, so Rutherford B. Hayes, just make a note for him that he was known for his honesty. On the Republicans, they chose Rutherford B. Hayes, while the Democrats, they chose Samuel J. Tilden. Alright, your book points out, well, this was actually a very close race for it. It came down to just basically 20 electoral votes, which sounds extremely familiar to recent history. It came down to Oregon, Florida, and South Carolina. Many Republican newspapers even said that Hayes had already lost by this point because Hayes needed all 20 votes to win. So they said, okay, the odds of that happening are really slim, it's gotta be Tilden. So they actually already said in the newspaper, Tilden won, even though all the electoral votes had not been counted yet. Which again, sounds extremely familiar. Again, it's one of those, again, in this time period, because counting and mailing in the ballots was really slow. There was a little bit of indicacy for it. Okay, ready, you don't have permission to talk? No. Alright, so your book points out as well, in Oregon, it swung over that, okay, that one came out as clearly for Hayes. The other three states, it was not easily settled. So both groups ended up sending, we think we won, so we're going to send our electoral votes. So each party sent in their own electoral vote saying, both parties claiming we won in the state for it. So they didn't know what to do. They never had this before, saying, well, how do we decide who's right and who's not? And it was getting too close to time at this point. So what they did back in this time period was they created a special electoral commission to decide, okay, whose votes do we count? Because if Hayes gets all 20, then Hayes wins the election. So that's when people realize it's super important. That electoral commission consisted of equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans because they understood you gotta have an equal number, otherwise that's unfair. So it has to be an equal number of Democrats and Republicans. There was supposed to be one independent, someone that wouldn't be a member of either party to decide, okay, whose votes do we count. Unfortunately, that independent was elected to the Senate, and he couldn't be on the Electoral Commission and the Senate at the same time, so he resigned, and his replacement was a Republican. And so because of that, all the Republicans said, the Republican votes count, it's ours, we claim them. And so because of that, Hayes got the correct number of electoral votes to win. The Democrats argued that it was unjust, and they were partially right, but they said, okay, we'll compromise. We'll let Hayes be president, and we won't pitch a fit about it, but we want three things from this. So look at the compromise of 1877. So make a note for that. So 1877. There were three parts to it. Where the Democrats were saying, keep in mind this is mainly the South, saying, okay, we won't fuss about this if these three provisions are made for us. All right, what's that first one, Ethan? Page 238, top of the page.
Hayes.
Yep.
Point at least one Southerner to his cabinet.
Why do you think they wanted one Southerner in particular to his cabinet?
So they won't look at.
Yes, they said, okay, it's been long enough at this point after the Civil War. We want to make sure our voice is heard. We need at least one person on the cabinet. All right, number 2. Genesis, what's that one?
Federal money be spent to develop the Southern
Economy. Why do you think they wanted that?
Because the South was what's it called, not good at the time.
Yeah, it was in shambles because so much of it, because remember they had lost their slaves, a lot of their land was destroyed. They said, we need government money. we need help, please help us, we just need this. Now keep in mind, welfare wasn't really a thing at the time period, that's what they're saying specifically, we need money to help to kind of switch over for it. Alright, and then the last one, Brecken.
All federal troops be removed from the south. This.
Wait, that was just the last thing, right? So, all federal troops can be removed from the South. They were tired of being military districts. They said, okay, we won't pitch a fit about your person, your presidential candidate becoming president, as long as we have a Southerner on the cabinet, we get money to help switch over our economy, and you take away the military. We will figure it out ourselves. And so those three, not demands, but those three requests were met, and the Republicans understood, okay, yeah, that's fair, because this was a highly unusual situation. Sure, we'll do this for you. So that marks the official end of Reconstruction of the South. So make a note for that. So the compromise of 1877 and with Hayes' election. So make a note for that. So Hayes was peacefully inaugurated, and this marks the official end of the Southern Reconstruction. Alright, anyone have any questions about that? Alright, so what happened during the Reconstruction is the next kind of final little last bit, talking about all of the Southerners, whether you were a white Southerner or a black Southerner, just how it was so rough for the South in general for it. Your book points out that one of the first major people that came down to take advantage in the South were the carpetbaggers. Make a note for them. These were northern politicians who went south after the war, and they would take their belongings in a carpet bag or kind of like a suitcase, that's the idea for it, and they would go down there to basically take advantage. Keep in mind, could the white Southerners vote immediately after the war? No, they could not. So who could vote right after the war?
Northern.
Northerners, and then what other people group of the South could vote after the 50s?
black.
Those who own land.
Freedmen.
Yeah, freedmen that basically that weren't being oppressed by the black codes, because there was black codes limitations on it. So basically, the only people that could vote in the South were the black Southerners or the freedmen. And so because of that, these Northerners are coming down there to take advantage, because could a lot of the freedmen read in this time period? Quentin? No. So the Northerners would come down just to tell them, you should vote for me, or you should vote for this person. And they were there just to take advantage. And the white Southerners knew that. And some of the black Southerners realized that, and they understood that, but they didn't know what to do. They were uneducated. They didn't know how to fix it. A scalawag, we use this term kind of loosely. How many of you, your grandmother may call you a scalawag, or use the term very loosely?
She called me a disappointment.
I'm sorry. Alright, so, but again, I hear this term occasionally, but a scalawag in this time period was a white Southerner who was cooperating with the carpetbaggers. Basically, it's like a traitor. That was the idea of, you're helping out the Northerners that are coming down. You're a scalawag, you're a traitor, was the idea behind it. So, a carpetbagger and a scalawag, make a note for that, for those two people that are just basically trying to just take advantage of other people. So make a note for them for it. You unfortunately had the formation of the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. Make a note for that one, because since the white Southerners could not vote in this time period, a lot of the government that was being unformed, it was poorly constructed, and in some cases wasn't very fair and wasn't working properly. And so because of that, the white Southerners decided that they would take matters into their own hands and start doing kind of like a vigilante justice, but they were using it to terrorize the freedmen as well. So again, not good in this time period. I understand why they did it, but it's not a good idea at all. And unfortunately, this still even sticks around today. So the Ku Klux Klan, make a note for that one, because since the white Southerners couldn't vote, they felt like they had to do vigilante justice, but no, they were using it incorrectly. Okay, quick question. Is there a question? Wait. Is it an appropriate question?
Yes.
Okay, go.
When you say you understand why they did it, what do you mean by that?
Okay, so
I know you don't mean that you agree with that. I actually know that. I was just asking like what you mean, like why would that be okay? Like not why would it be okay, but why would they?
okay, because everyone does typically people do things whenever they have a reason for it, unless you're like really psychotic and crazy. They do something because there's a reason for it. Now, keep in mind, the white Southerners couldn't vote, and so because of that, the Northerners, the carpetbaggers, were coming down and telling basically the freedmen how to vote. So there were several things to just benefit the Northerners in power, or to use money unjustly and unwisely and to just waste it. A lot of the Northerners were using it to either just get rich down in the South or to use it to get power. And so a lot of the white Southerners were realizing, oh, that's unfair. You shouldn't be doing that. But they couldn't do anything about it because they couldn't vote. So that's why they resorted to the Ku Klux Klan. So kind of like vigilante justice. That's why vigilante justice is very, very sketchy, and you don't want to get involved with it all that much because it gets bad really quick. They were using it to terrorize the freedmen, which was not good at all. and even today, the KKK sticks around again to still basically just be racist. It's a lot smaller today, thankfully, but this is where it starts off. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I have another one. It's
Okay.
quick. So the KKK, you hear all these stories about like, oh, they used to kill black people, they used to lynch them, or
Yep.
they used to hang them.
Yep.
They really
Yep.
did that.
Yep. Yep.
They would, because they would also like hang them on trees, wouldn't they?
Yep, that's basically it. Okay, keep in mind,
How
it
is
does,
that terrorizing them? Though?
what?
How is that terrorizing them if they're dead? They can't be terrorized.
Because it was more to keep the other people in line. Like, that guy didn't vote correctly, or that guy didn't do what we said, so now he's dead.
So it was literally like a dictatorship.
It's not really a dictatorship because they're not in power.
And
It's
they
a
weren't big
terrorist
enough?
kind of group. You don't think of it that way. Technically, it's not quite because there's a different definition of a terrorist group, but it's the idea of they're using terror tactics to scare people to do what they want. Okay,
Why didn't they get arrested?
what?
Why
They didn't know who they were in a lot of cases. Now, keep in mind, again, this is an unfortunate time period, and there is a lot of racial prejudice starts in the South because of things like this. And even people like Booker T. Washington, other people realize this is creating a lot of tension between the white Southerners and the black Southerners, between both groups. In personal opinion, because I don't know if I can prove this, but I think that that's one reason why the South is known for being racist for so long, is because right after the Civil War, these types of things were started up to where it was naturally white Southern versus black Southern. I think that's why it stayed so long in the South, is because so many bad feelings were created right after the Civil War. So again, we can look back in retrospect and understand, oh, okay, we could have done this and this and this. But keep in mind, they're trying their best. This is also, again, right after the Civil War, which again, people are still grieving, they're still angry and upset. So that's why there is a lot of hateful, in some cases, just petty and mean things going on as well. And plus horrible crimes with the KKK. Alright, anyone have any questions about this though? So does that help clarify it for you? Okay. So, maybe not one, you both explained that the freedmen, carpetbags, and scalawags, they were gradually removed from office because each passing year, more of the southern whites, the younger children, as they grew older and became of voting age and voting requirements, they could vote more and more and more, so that way it wasn't just the black southerners or the freedmen, they weren't just the ones being taken advantage of anymore. It was that it was more of balancing out. Congress passed the Amnesty Act, which restored political rights to most of those who cooperated with the Confederacy, and the political influence of freedmen was considered limited. So make a note for that one though. The Amnesty Act, which restored political rights to most of those who cooperated with the Confederacy, and the political influence of freedmen was considerably limited, with the idea of, okay, what?
I know there's like a ring like all over.
I know. I just have already seen it. Okay, make sure you're not distracting yourself though, because it's your own water bottle. Alright, so make a note for that. This is whenever you start having like a rebalance of the freedmen and the white southerners, that both of them together are more voting. So that way it's more fair for both groups. And there's hopefully, with the idea, both groups are realizing that there are just laws being passed for both of them. Alright, so you might point out by the 1890s, poll taxes and literacy tests were removed. This was to limit black voters in particular for it. So poll taxes and also the scalawags, or the poor white southerners as well. The poll taxes, this is taxes that citizens had to pay before they could vote. This is illegal today. You can't do this. It was the idea of you had to have money to vote, and it was to hopefully discriminate at this time period against the freedmen and against the really poor southerners. It should not matter how much money you make, you should be able to vote regardless. But it was the idea of putting limitations on them. And a literacy test, does anyone know what a literacy test is? Okay. Yeah, no, it is important to be able to be an informed voter and to know who you're voting for. Okay, that is a good thing. And so because of that, they would put literacy tests. But most of the people that were illiterate in this time period were the freedmen, so it was against them in particular. Now keep in mind, you should still know who you're voting for and be able to read the ballot. That is important. But this was to put kind of on purpose, saying, okay, if you're uneducated, in particular the freedmen, we don't want you to vote, and that's unfair too as well. So make it out, so poll taxes and literacy tests. Both of them, they do away with this later on in the 1890s from it. But because the South voted Democratic for so long, now we're going to talk about why the South kind of switches over in the 1960s, 70s later on. But the South voted Democratic for a very long time. The majority of people, not again, there were the freedmen down here in the South as well that also voted. But for a long time, the South was known as being a Democratic section. So make a note of that. The solid South was used to indicate that for many years. The South voted steadily Democratic. We're talking about the reason kind of why it swaps over later on. Okay.
If say someone like says like the South or it says like Republicans are racist, would it be wrong, or would it be like would it be wrong to say, well,
You're talking about the Democrats or the Republicans?
if the Democrats say Republicans are racist,
Okay,
would
it
it be wrong for them to
depends.
say that Democrats were actually the ones that voted for slavery?
You can point that out to them, because keep in mind, both groups kind of gradually switch over in the 1960s, 1970s, that's when more things like welfare comes out and more ideas like government helping. So, originally, Republicans was formed to free the slaves, that was their original intent. And then, the Democrats were voting more for states' rights. And so they acknowledge that, like I've actually gone to both their web pages to see like what they say about their earliest histories. Republicans acknowledge that, and the Democrats also acknowledge that because it's so much in history books that they can't get away from it. But the train of thought switches around the 1960s. That's whenever they would start doing more of government welfare functions in the Democrats. And the Republicans say, no, we want more of, it should be private enterprise more. That's whenever both groups kind of swap. Now, it's not the idea of the Republicans are turning racist, but since they don't like a lot of welfare, and a lot of welfare is typically presented as to help out certain people groups, that's why they're accused of being racist. And that's not all of them.
All the
Okay.
Republicans want is to see their country succeed.
Okay, we don't have time to get political for it, but it's two different views. It's like the ideas of federal rights and states' rights. It's two different views. Some people feel like the government should help out those that are less fortunate than them. That's what they believe. They think it should be the government's job to help out people that are sick, like for like Medicaid and Medicare and Obamacare. They believe for things like that it should be the government's job, and they honestly believe that. Some people say no, that's better more for private industry, it's better for the economy, it makes it cheaper overall for it. So again, it's just two different thoughts for it. So again, it's not necessarily that one group is racist, one group is not, but because of how it's presented, it seems like it today. Alright, I don't have time to answer that question more thoroughly because I've got to finish. Alright, but we gotta keep going for it. Alright, Booker T. Washington, yeah, we're talking about that, y'all. Alright, so Booker T. Washington, make a note for him that, that he was the founder of Tuskegee Institute, so you know where that is probably already. So Booker T. Washington, make a note for him. He wrote in his book, Up From Slavery, talking about the Reconstruction era because he was young whenever the Civil War happened, but he remembers different events that happened in the Reconstruction. Let's see what his quote says on top of the page. So it's a block quote, who wants to read it?
Where?
Top of page 239. It's a giant block quote. It says right above toward what?
It's too long.
Okay, anyone else want it?
That's gonna be a no for me.
Alright, I'm just gonna pick someone then.
Okay, I'll read it.
Okay, Joseph.
It is easy to find fault. You want me to read the whole thing?
Yes, please.
Okay. It is easy to find fault to remark what might have been done, and perhaps after all, and under all the circumstances, those in charge of the conduct of affairs did the one thing that could be done at the time. Still, as I look back now over the entire period of our freedom, I cannot help feeling that it would be wiser if some plan could have put it in operation, which would have made the possession of a certain amount of education or property or both a test for the exercise of the franchise. In many cases, it seemed to me that the ignorance of my race was being used as a tool with which to help white men into office, and that there was an element in the North which wanted to punish the Southern white men, forcing the Negro into positions over the heads of the Southern whites. I feel that the Negro would be the one to suffer for this man. Besides, the general political agitation drew the attention of our people away from the more fundamental matters of perfecting themselves in the industries at their doors in securing property.
Yeah, so Booker T. Washington, and he was saying, okay, I understood, like you want to give them the right to vote, but he was saying my people were being taken advantage of, and then also in some cases the carpetbaggers were using them to punish the whites, the white Southerners, and he said, and that's what he was saying, that we're basically just being used, and that's not good for any of the freedmen whatsoever. It's not good for the white Southerners. This should not be happening. And so again, it's unfortunate, and that's one of the things about looking back in history. You can see, oh, they should have done this instead, or that instead, but they're doing the best they can at the time. And Booker T. Washington was probably one of the first people to kind of realize, we shouldn't do this, because the only people that really suffer are going to be the freedmen, and then the white Southerners at the time. Alright, so let's read about Booker T. Washington again at the bottom of the page, really quick. We gotta talk about this as well. Alright, you want to read first?
Sure.
Alright.
Booker T. Washington dedicated his life to the cause of black equality in America. He exhorted his fellow black Americans to gain acceptance by developing high standards and striving to excel. After 1895, many recognized him as the most influential black American spokesman, setting an example for all Americans to follow.
Alright, anyone else want to read the next section? We're just gonna pick somebody then, so we're gonna go around. Quentin.
Washington spent the first few years of his life in slavery on a Virginia plantation. When he was 16, Washington enrolled in Hampton Institute, where he worked as a janitor to help pay his school expenses. He later taught school in West Virginia and served on the faculty of Hampton. Then 1881 he left to found Tuskegee Institute. Washington incorporated into the curriculum not only technical skills but also an emphasis on work ethics, integrity, and high moral character.
Alright, wants to read the last little bit?
Hey.
Someone hasn't read it. Alright, Ethan.
Washington encouraged other Black Americans to gain opportunities by using the opportunities they already possess to the best advantage. At the same time, he encouraged Blacks to employ Blacks in higher positions and work to overcome racial problems. Through his example, consistent dedication to work, Booker T. Washington greatly aided Black Americans in gaining equality.
Yes, make it out of him. So make it up in the italicized phrase that he's one of the most influential Black American spokesmen, trying to help out with the freedmen, saying, okay, how are we going to get equality? Not just our rights, but then also how do we get other people to respect us as well. Alright, towards a better future. So besides politics, a lot of churches and a lot of other groups were saying, okay, we need to educate the freedmen first off. Why do you need to educate the freedmen first if you want to help them out and better themselves? Alright, Chris.
So they understand what you're saying.
Okay, not necessarily what you're saying.
They understand what they're fighting for, or what they're calling for.
Okay, yes, partly. How do they do that?
By educating them and what's going on.
Alright, so I'm thinking of something else. So why did, thinking way back to Massachusetts, an old Deluder Satan Act, what was that? Do you remember?
What we were saying that was like in the field stuff, right? Like where you just I thought it was like when you would teach school in the field.
Yeah.
School in general.
So basically saying, okay, if there's 50 families in an area, you have to hire a school teacher. Because being able to, what?
With the blue pets, probably.
Okay, not quite to that part time period
I
yet,
know,
but
it's-
you're right, it is coming up. So it was the idea of, okay, if you have 50 families, you should be able to hire a teacher because you can keep the teacher from starving. That is kind of like the same idea. They're saying, okay, we need to educate them. They need to be able to read and write. They need to understand what's happening so that way they can read first off or to help them out so that they are not relying on the carpetbaggers.
And they can
So,
also
wait,
vote.
Richard? Yes.
And they can also vote.
Yeah,
They
also,
pass the literacy test.
yeah, okay, yes, in the time period that they have the literacy test, then yes, they can pass the literacy test. So, part of that for, what?
Part of me still thinks you should have a literacy test.
I understand, but at the same time, it should be the idea of, okay, even if you're really poor and if you're struggling in education, they should have a way for people to still vote to where they understand clearly what they're doing, like what they're choosing for. But it's really, really hard whenever you're saying, okay, you have to be able to do this to vote. It's one of those, you want to have everyone be able to vote for it. I understand what you're talking about because I've had discussions with people about this, but you want people to make an educated decision. And as long as they can as long as they can make a conscious decision over this is the person I choose, they should have the right to vote, no matter if you think that no matter if you agree with their opinion or not, they should be allowed to choose to vote as best as they can for it. Now, I have 5 minutes. Let me finish first and I'll come back to questions. Alright, so make a note for it as well you had almost over Freedmen Aid Society, make a note for that one. Freedmen Aid Society, this was, let's see, this is the Methodist Episcopal Church founded under this one in particular. There's other ones, but that one is a major one for them. So Freedmen Aid Society, make a note for that one. Alright, Washington, he almost went into politics, but he decided to not because he felt like education was so important for his people, the freedmen, that he wanted to stay and help them out and try to help them have a trade, have skill, and to be able to go out and work in society. Your book points out in this quote, not quite at the top of the page, a little bit farther down, saying that he felt like to make the freedmen become equal, that they needed property, industry, skill, economy, intelligence, and character. Now, all people need that, not just the freedmen. But he was saying that this makes the best types of citizens. If you have property or a place to live, it's your home, you're responsible for it. If you have industry, you're gonna go out and work, skill, so that you're good at whatever trade you want to do, economy or money to be able to succeed in your job, intelligence, I can't help you with that, you either have it or you don't. And then character as well, and you get character by reading the Bible and by trying to live according to the principles. Alright, George Washington Carver, making it around, he was the best known teacher of Tuskegee Institute. He's known for peanuts. He comes later in the book for that though. So just for right now, George Washington Carver, make a note for him for it as well. That he was very, very forgiving of the South because he wanted to help out the South in particular. That's the reason why he was looking up into see how do I use the peanuts so much. Because he understood the South's land was pretty much ruined right after the Civil War, and wanted to come up with what's a good crop the South can grow to help fix the soil. Plus, they can use it and make money from it as well. All right, so United Nations. Your book points out the official end of Reconstruction came in 1877 with the removal of the last federal troops from the South. With whose election? Was it the compromise of 1877? Took about this earlier.
Age.
Make a note for him for it. Alright, your book also points out, right after the Civil War, they also did sharecropping. Okay, make a note for this. This is whenever the plantation owner divided his land into small plots, and each was worked by a farmer, typically the freedman and his family, and the plantation owner would get the land, and he would get, a lot of cases, he would sell the crops, and so because of that, he would get, some cases it would go back to the slaves, the freedmen, or the slaves that had worked for the plantation owner. In a lot of cases, they would stay on and work for him as well. Whenever the sharecrop or harvested his crops, all three parties would benefit. The plantation owner, the freedman that worked on the plantation, as well as the merchant that some cases would loan them the credit. What system does that sound extremely close to with sharecropping? We have one person that owns the land and other people work the land. Yep, basically they do this right after the Civil War because it was like an emergency time period. So we went back to feudalism temporarily just because the freedmen have to make money and have to get food, and the plantation owners had to have workers right then and right there. So they kind of went back to this dies down later on, but it was an emergency kind of, we've got to do something. So sharecropping and feudalism right after the Civil War. Alright, that wraps up everything for it. So your book has the Dr. Berger at the top of the page. Did Reconstruction hurt or help the South in the long run? Anyone want to share what they thought really quick? Hurt. I would agree with that. Okay, keep in mind, now the freedmen did benefit. I'm not discrediting that. But it was the idea of overall, it creates just so many bad feelings in this time period, and both groups are taken advantage of. The freedmen and the white settlers, both groups for it, and both groups are being taken advantage of and hurt. So both sides are going to be struggling against each other, I think, for a long time period. Alright, quick, and then I gotta give you home. Okay, do you have a question? Quick question. Fast.
I'm gonna say one thing.
No homework.
I'm gonna say the one thing about the voting thing.
Okay, wait, is it about sharecropping or is it about the voting thing?
One
Okay,
thing that you said
wait.
to talk to you about.
Oh yeah, hang on, wait, I'm gonna give homework first and then I can cut off the video so I can move on from it. Alright, so your homework?
None.
You have homework, I'm sorry.
None.
Alright, so be sure to study for quiz on Monday. Study for quiz on Monday. Alright, so you're going to do on page 241, people, 1 through 7. You're not done.
Oh.
Sorry, not sorry.
You're hurting my
People
wrist.
1 through 7. Alright, you also have, too far, hang on. You also have on page 231, you're going to have people 1 through 19 odd. Okay, you should be able to write these super quick for like the first one. Well, like the first one, Beauregard. What's Beauregard known for?
A cool name.
General that captured which fort?
Sumter.
So something like that, really fast, really easy. So again, page 141, people 1 through 7 should be really quick. And then on page 230, people 1 through 19 odd. So again, it should be super quick and super fast.
230?
Yeah, 230, I think 219.
Where did 23 from?
230, 1 through 19, people odd.